Morning, kids. Today we're going to take a look at energy. We've been looking at economic geography, and one of the biggest needs of industry is always energy, to provide energy. Remember, the Industrial Revolution starts out really when you go from like man-powered and water-powered to coal-powered and other power, which gives a continuous source of power year-round, which can fuel the factories that were needed for the Industrial Revolution. But let's take a quick look at energy today to give you some of the basic facts. There's two types of energy, renewable and non-renewable. Non-renewable energy is stuff that's there. It's like coal, it's like oil. It's there, but when you burn it, it's gone. A renewable energy source would be something like wind power. There's always going to be wind, solar power. That's stuff that is not going to be used up. In the United States, if you take a look at this chart, a little blurry, but if you take a look at the chart, petroleum, natural gas are some of the biggest sources of energy in the United States. When you think about it, though, with petroleum, all the gas we burn in all of our cars, the natural gas, the heating in your house, coal, which provides electricity. Then you go down, you get nuclear, biomass, and other stuff. Biomass is going to be a new source of energy from stuff like algae and other things. But it's really, if you look, it's always been petroleum, natural gas, coal. Those are the big ones. Starting, if you look at that in the 1960s, nuclear power it looks like the wave of the future. It was billed as a clean energy. Well, let's take a look at some of these. Petroleum, that's oil. The first thing there, that's a definition that I found. It's a mixture of hydrocarbons that present in certain rock strata, blah, blah, blah. Translated, it's smashed biomass that was compressed over millions of years. And when I was a kid, Sinclair Oil always had a Dino the dinosaur outside, a green Dino the dinosaur. Because in a way, that's kind of what it is, all that stuff that's compressed. If you look at the picture here, this is where the big fields in America are. Now, you know that Texas and, the Gulf Coast, that doesn't surprise you. Oklahoma, that area down, if you've ever been to Kansas, you see all the oil wells there. That doesn't surprise a lot of us. The one that might surprise you if you look over the Pennsylvania area, but that's where the petroleum boom first starts out. That's where the first wells were. Pennzoil is Pennsylvania oil. Take a look at the picture over there. Look at the different things you get from oil. The plastic that you use in your pens and your baggies and all sorts of packaging. Plastics come from oil. Obviously, cars and diesel. But in cars you also need oil to lubricate. You gotta. If you don't do that, your engine will overheat. That's why you got to get your oil changed. And there's all sorts of other type of stuff that comes from oil. A lot of byproducts, Girls, a lot of the makeup you use with the petroleum base as a base for it and stuff. All right. With the oil that you get, you have to extract it. That's the pumping. But then you also have to refine it. You have to take that crude oil that comes out of the ground, and then you have to do something with it. And when you refine the oil, that's where you get the different types, and you get gasoline. You get like asphalt for paving cars and stuff like roads and stuff like that. You get plastics and all. If you look at the map here, you'll see that in America, a lot of the refining is down in the Gulf Coast. There's some in the Midwest, of course. If you look down in Oklahoma, Kansas area, you'll see a bunch of dots there too. Think about it. That's where the oil is. But the Gulf Coast is a huge refining area. That's why whenever there's like a hurricane about to nail the Gulf Coast, you see the prices are going to go up because they're going to have to close down those refineries. If you look at the big map of the world, if you notice Saudi Arabia, look how dark Saudi Arabia is over in the Middle East. If you look down in South America, you can see the country of Venezuela. They have huge, huge reserves of oil. Russia has a lot of oil. If you look at the United States and Canada have big oil, though a lot of Canada's oil is stuff called the tar sands and shale, where it's a harder stuff to get out of the ground. The Canadian one, that's what they keep talking about here in Nebraska, that pipelined all the way down to the refineries from Canada, and that's what goes past Nebraska. And there's been a lot of controversy here about it. A lot of you might have heard the term fracking. And that's not you kids taking a test, because I hear in the back of the room all the time, oh, it's a fracking test, or I think that's what I hear. I'm not sure. No, fracking is when you get more gas and oil out of the ground. Oil, it's locked up in the dirt, in the rock and stuff. If you pump down hot water and other stuff, you can actually break the rock and you can release more of the oil. One of the dangers of fracking, a lot of it is, though, when you put all that down there, then it can also get into the water and other stuff. And a lot of people aren't sure about that. There's famous pictures of people like in Pennsylvania uh, can actually light their water coming out of their faucet on fire because the fracking has got in the water. Now that's very controversial. I'm not going to go into that. Some people say it's a big area of concern. Others say, hey, we need the oil and it's safe. So we're not going to go into that today. But this is just a quick look at petroleum. The world has a lot of petroleum, and with fracking and tar sands and shale, we're able to extract more oil all the time. The article you're going to look at Classroom, though, is going to talk about how right now oil prices have just cratered worldwide. Because remember, we talked about OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Well, they're feuding. Russia and Saudi Arabia right now are feuding, and both of them are pumping a lot of oil out. And when you have a huge supply, that drives the price down. When you have people not driving because of the COVID virus, that really drives the price down. So you're going to look at that article. But anyhow, taking a look at oil. Coal is another source. Now, coal is, again, it's compressed plants, compressed stuff from millions of years ago. If you look at the hand there, coal is black. I've held it in my hand. It's just like it covers your hands. It gets your hands dirty. We have a lot of coal. We actually have hundreds of years worth of coal in the United States. We have deep coal reserves, but that doesn't mean they're all accessible or affordable, okay? Depends upon how deep the coal is, it's more expensive to go at it. More recently, we've done stuff called open pit mining, and I'll flip back to this. But open pit mining is when you basically strip all the rock and everything off the top of the coal, and then you can dig the coal out. Uh, Open pit mines, especially like in Wyoming, if you've noticed all the coal trains coming across Nebraska, that's the state of Wyoming coming through us. It's all those coal from those open pit mines. In Appalachia, most of the mines had always been tunnels in the earth, and you have the danger of coal mines collapse and stuff like that. But they've also gone to a lot of open pit mining. Controversy about open pit mining is can leave a little bit of effect on the land behind. Though in Wyoming, they try to reclaim it as best they can, I know. All right, if you look on the map, you'll see that there's a lot of sources. If you look at Wyoming out there and Colorado, you notice all the coal that's out there in the Rocky area, and that's the stuff, again, most of that's open pit, and that's what's been shipped around for like the electricity around in our area, okay? If you look over in the yellow thing in Appalachia, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, that is where it's always traditionally been mined, okay? Now, coal is used a lot for electricity, but now there's a lot of different things that people are using for electricity. The demand for coal is dropping. Coal is a pollutant, so you have to do extra stuff to protect. Like here in Omaha with our coal plant, we've got scrubbers and stuff on the smokestacks. So it does cost extra. If you look on the chart over here, look at the coal jobs. The coal jobs are really declining. That's why in the last election, President Trump made a huge effort to the coal mining area, saying, hey, I'm going to do stuff for the coal mining industry. Because when you look at that chart over there, that number shows that the jobs are dropping. And there are concerns about pollution. Coal is pollution, but we have a lot of coal, and coal is available. But if the other sources of energy are cheaper, business will and power will always go with the cheaper thing. There's alternate energy sources out there too. I took my wife to the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, Minnesota, and one of the things I noticed driving across southern Minnesota and across Iowa is all the windmills. And if you guys have driven across Iowa and Minnesota, you've seen all the wind farms. It's astounding. We here in Nebraska don't have as many. You'll see a couple, like I know most obviously if you drive to Lincoln, you'll see some big windmills just north of Lincoln on the interstate there. But it's nothing like, look at this picture over here. That's nothing like what you see in Minnesota. If you look at the map over there, you see where a lot of areas in the United States are starting to look at wind power. One of the big exceptions, of course, is the South. You really don't see a lot in the South. But in the Midwest, you are seeing more and more. And in other places. Now, there's pros and cons with wind power also. Those big wind things, they take a lot of room. They're expensive. And you have to replace them. It's expensive. Some people have even said that, there's an impact on birds and stuff. I don't know because I don't understand it. But it's very possible they are. But on the other hand, it is a source of electricity that doesn't generate any pollution with it. Okay? So Whether it's affordable or practical or not, it's been a big argument. We're not going to go into that. I'm just telling you, a lot of America has gone to wind farms because it's a renewable energy source. Solar power, if you look at places like California, where you have the desert and all that, where you get a lot of sun, is more practical than in other places in America where they don't get the same amount of direct sunlight and all. Okay, but solar power is another source of possible future energy. There's other things like hydrothermal. There's tidal power. There's a lot of other sources out there, and we're just now really looking at the future about what can be done with different forms of energy. In the 1960s, nuclear power looked like it was going to be the answer. You know, we had nuclear bombs, obviously, but we thought we could use the atom for good of mankind, harness it. And one of the things is it doesn't really release carbon pollution in the air like coal. Now, I guess I should step back here a second. A lot of you kids assume you flip the switch, just magic happens and electricity comes. A traditional electric fire plant, or a plant that produces electricity, you have to heat water, and either by burning coal, burning natural gas, or nuclear power, you heat the water up, turns to steam, turns turbines. Those turbines turn magnets, creates electricity, and then it returns. So technically, if you think about it, like with the nuclear power, there's no pollution being released in the air. But there can be other problems. In Chernobyl, in the Ukraine, in 1986, they had a disaster. If you look at the picture, you can see what a disaster is. When you have what's a nuclear meltdown, if it gets out of control, the water isn't able to control the cooling or control it, things can melt down. Radioactivity can be released in the air. And if you look at the map over there, you can take a look at how far across Europe Chernobyl spewed all sorts of radioactivity. And there's still even problems today. With Chernobyl, they went in and just poured concrete over it, tried to cap it. But you're just taking a problem and just kind of hiding it for a little bit. In the United States, we also had a problem, 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania. And one of our nuclear plants in Pennsylvania had a problem. So it almost was a Chernobyl level disaster. Japan, the Fukushima plant, they had a tsunami in Japan and it nailed this plant. Excuse me. And that released a lot of nuclear problems in Japan. So a lot of countries have started looking at nuclear power and are starting to say, do we really want that danger? Because, I mean, it doesn't pollute now, but if there's a disaster, you can. Here in Omaha, we used to have 2 nuclear plants. Up by Fort Calhoun, and then down by Nebraska City was another plant. The Fort Calhoun plant has been closed. We've had flooding problems with the Missouri and stuff, and it just is not so feasible anymore. And Fort Calhoun plant has been closed. The other one is still open. In some of the countries around the world, they're realizing, well, you can close the plants, but then what do you do with the nuclear product that you've created? There's a waste there, and that has a long life. Okay? Just a quick look at energy, why energy is important in industry, and it's important because countries need to know what source of energy do we have in the future that's going to fuel our industry or our factories, our cars and stuff. And geography-wise, it becomes really important because as the world drives, gas becomes so important. And remember, we talked about those neo-Malthusians. It's not just about food. Resources are also important around the world. And it's a consideration. It really does. As the world is so connected, you want to know where your sources are going to be and how that's going to have an effect on people. Because your resources don't just fuel industry, it also has an effect on the environment around us.